What's up, Drew? Can you hear me? All right, Drew, can you hear me?
How we doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, brother. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Welcome. Find your inner pirate, baby.
Let's
How we
go.
doing?
Doing great, man. We've had our podcasting troubles, but listen, we're here. We got just football content ahead of us, and
Let's
that makes me
go.
excited.
It's going to be a lot of meat and potatoes tonight, brother. A lot of hardcore football action. Like Drew was just saying, we have to figure out some recording stuff. I really like doing these Twitter spaces. I think the more popular we get, Drew, it'll be good for us. It's just I want to be able to put it out as a podcast on Spotify because I think that's something I want to
Yeah,
have a consistent
a
release
library of it.
schedule. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, man,
Hey,
good.
man, I agree with you.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun these Sunday pods, man. Drew and I
Listen,
actually just did a Thursday pod, and so here we are again, a couple days later.
I mean, I I feel like we're getting right into the season beginning, and you can just kind of feel there's a tension in the air. Football is right around the
Oh yeah,
corner. We're playing preseason games.
I know. I
It's
was
it's hard
pissed.
not to just get all into it, you know?
I was pissed whenever I realized there wasn't any more preseason action this weekend after the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
I was like, "What? They're not starting week 1 preseason." I guess we'll get into it next week.
Yeah. Well,
But
listen, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got a long list of wide receivers that we're going over today.
oh, we're doing receivers.
What are you on? What are
I
we
thought
on?
we were doing tight ends today.
Oh, tight ends today.
But
Okay.
whatever you want to roll with, man. There's a ton of receivers out there. We can
I
definitely.
was just going through our texts that we had, and last week we did those quarterbacks. There's another one that I just think is very interesting. I've
Yeah,
already
let's
got
get
a
into it.
okay. So wide receivers, I feel like once you get into the later rounds, right? If you've had a safe draft up at the top,
Uh
let's
huh.
we're not taking any guys with big question marks. We're taking just point scorers every week in every category. You've got a solid team. If that's your strategy, then this later round is where you win the draft.
Okay.
So these are really, really sort of important, crucial picks. And I want to go on the wide receiver tab from Rashee Rice down at 136 to KJ Osborne, 148.
My sleeper this year, KJ Osborne.
Ooh. There's a lot
I
in
want to
this
get.
list that I'm just excited about. I'm really excited to
Yeah,
talk about these.
I'm excited too, man.
So,
So you want to go with Rashee Rice first?
yeah, and we're gonna do sort of lightning rounds here because we've got a timer on the clock. We're gonna start over 42 minutes right now. 42 minutes of just some good football talk on each of these guys.
Let's do it.
Rashee Rice is a guy I've been following closely. I get every single rumor, highlight, piece of news that comes through Chiefs Kingdom.
Uh huh.
And Rashee Rice is one of these guys that there's a stigma against Andy Reid and his usage with rookie wide receivers. It's just been a
Hmm.
historical thing. He does not play his rookie wide receivers and give them fantasy points. It's like Bill Belichick and running backs. But the Chiefs wide receiver core this year is such where you have no idea who is going to be the number one on any given day.
Hmm.
There's just so many qualified slash unqualified people for that number one spot. And you've got to throw Rashee Rice in the mix. Now,
Yeah.
what we've been seeing is just pure highlights from him this summer. But part of me still says, you know how this story plays out, Drew. Andy Reid,
Yeah.
rookie wide receivers. So I want to know what are your thoughts, someone who is farther away from this situation with
Yeah,
Rasheed Rice.
I think that's what I love about being able to talk Chiefs with you, Drew. Is you're so dialed in. I learned so much about the intricacies of the team, but on the flip side, I give you that outsider's perspective, and I've been in drafts where Rasheed Rice is like top guy available by ADP, and I just don't draft him,
Yeah.
Drew. That's just, and I really wish I knew who had a Sky Moore, Valdez Scantling, Tony. I wish who I knew that top wide receiving option's going to be outside of Kelsey. But Drew, I think it's going to be a lot of Kelsey. It's going to the way the Chiefs are defended too. It's a lot of halfback passing, and I just can't get fired up. Even though Rasheed Rice went to school SMU, 4 year starter, had a great senior season. And I am very fond of SMU. That's where my sisters went to school. And I'm gonna be rooting for this kid. But you even got your boy Justin Ross in the mix
Yeah.
too for
Yeah.
targets. You know, and I just think there's too much competition here. Not to say he can't. I'm sure he will get a long ball or two throughout the year because he's a home run guy. I think. I just can't get too fired up about him.
I I'm on board with you, Jay. I think Rasheed Rice is the guy you pass on, in my personal opinion. There's I have a short list of three that I try and draft every time. It was three different at the beginning of the season, but now it's another three.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we might be talking about one of them a little bit later here today.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. But Rasheed Rice, I mean, ultimately, yeah, I think Andy Reid is a guy who goes by certain patterns. And one of the patterns is rookie starts behind and has to earn his job. If anything, he
yeah,
might get more playing time in the second half of the year, but he's not a guy that I'm targeting heavily at all, unless he slips very far, which happens.
yeah.
So,
100%.
so that's an interesting one. I think you and I kind of nailed it, and it leads us into another just interesting case, Jay. So you have over the offseason, the Dallas Cowboys had made a trade for Brandon Cooks,
Oh
one of the
yeah,
stud wide receivers from the Texans, and of course they also have CeeDee Lamb. And you're kind of sitting here looking at how is the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver core going to shake out, and this Michael Gallup. He had such a up and down year, but Michael Gallup is Michael Gallup. Uh, but he's another year older. What do you trust Michael Gallup to play at the talent that he has played in the past years? Do you trust it out of him this year with increased competition?
I don't.
No.
And it's part injury with him. He's a guy that gets banged up a lot. We mentioned Brandon Cook, CD Lamb. I think even Tony Pollard. I think those are probably the top three receiving options in Dallas. Michael Gallup had a lost season last year, and I just don't know where he fits in.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty dialed into the Cowboys living down here. I mean, I just don't like a lot of the things they did this offseason. I don't like the move to get rid of Kellen Moore. I thought Kellen Moore was a pretty creative offensive coordinator. I thought they did some interesting things. They let him go, and it's just like, oh well, Mike McCarthy's gonna call plays. It's gonna be hunky dory. Fuck no, it's
Uh-oh.
not. That guy doesn't know football.
Uh-oh.
He lied to Jerry Jones even getting the job, saying he just locked himself in the film room for a year. He didn't do that, and he even admitted that. I can't get fired up. I can get fired up about Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb with this team. Everything else, I don't know. I don't know about the Cowboys.
Okay.
They're going to try and run the ball a lot,
Let
too.
me ask you this, Jay. Is there an ADP that you would feel secure with Michael Gallup, or is he just kind of one of those guys that you feel is just sort of off your board no matter what?
Yeah,
Okay.
the latter.
Okay.
Too much he just I do think he's a talent. There's just too much unknown.
Okay. Well, speaking of washed wide receiver trades this offseason, I'm 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 just taking a shot at Brandon Cooks, but I love Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
But Allen Robinson, he
Oh.
was one of these guys, and we're not going over Allen Robinson right now. The guy we're going over is Van Jefferson, who
Mm.
who all of a sudden sees a pretty wide open scenario for a decent amount of targets because
Mhm.
there's I think the only other guy in competition that I've really heard of is a later round draft pick this past year, Puka Nakua.
Oh, what a
Yeah,
name.
right. And there's some positive things coming out about him during this training camp. I've just been seeing some
Nice.
stuff. So, but you're sitting there looking at a guy like Van Jefferson and saying, Sean McVay, he's going to have that offense doing something, even if it's Matt Stafford at quarterback or that Stetson Bennett. He'll be moving the
Mhm.
football, and could you see a decent fantasy season out of Van Jefferson? Probably nothing
Yeah.
spectacular, but do you see something there?
I'm much I would much rather draft this guy than Gallup. I
Okay.
think with the Allen Robinson thing to the Steelers, like you mentioned, that really is going to open him up. I mean, it's Cooper Cup gets double teamed. Um, was Jefferson hurt last year? Was he injured? I don't.
Let's take a look real
I
quick.
feel like he was because this is a guy I've always thought McVay did a great job of dialing up some deep shots too. And I know the Rams kind of had a lost season overall last
Yeah.
year, but this is a guy I think Matthew Stafford is just they're going to be trailing in some games, and that's why I kind of am high on Stafford fantasy because I just don't think they're going to be that great, and they're going to have to air it the fuck out. And Van Jefferson could be a good recipient of that.
I I like what you're cooking over there, Jay. Um, Van Jefferson, I do believe he did sustain an injury last year. I, the targets just aren't there to support that he wasn't injured. So
Uh huh.
I
I want to say he played at Florida in college. I'm not 100% on that, but either way, I think Van Jefferson is pretty talented.
yeah. I'm
27 this year, he's in his prime.
okay. I mean, I can be talked into him, but he's not a guy who excites me as a win the league type of guy. He
Uh
feels
huh.
more like a save your ass type of guy if you have drafted risky already and you need a safe floor out of a guy like Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just
I
kind
think
of what
that,
I'm feeling is that I can't see a scenario where he wins you the league.
yeah. I think what you're hoping for, Drew, like you said, is just consistency from this guy. I
Yeah.
do think he'll be consistent.
Okay. Well, I do want to move on, and I want to open up the discussion instead of really talking about this next guy. I want to include the second guy, and I want to include the rest of their wide receiver core,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is it's an interesting one we can talk about right now. And that's the next on the ADP list, Jonathan Mingo and Adam Thielen.
Oh,
Jonathan
okay.
Mingo, a rookie from Oklahoma, right?
No,
Oh,
where's he?
OSU? No.
Where I haven't really heard this name before, honestly, Drew.
Let's pull up his
This is a
story.
sleeper to me. Oh, he played at Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. That's right. So here's what I remember about the name the name Jonathan Mingo. I was, I don't follow college football, and I just follow draft risers and fallers.
Uh-huh.
It's my first introduction to their name, and I just start seeing, oh, this guy, Jonathan Mingo, he's being mocked to the Chiefs in their end of the third round
Mm-hmm.
pick. And then all of a sudden, boom, he shoots up there, and I think he's Carolina with the second round or something, maybe third,
Right.
But I'm like, whoa, that guy hopped up there quick. So Jonathan Mingo, he was just a guy you started seeing rise and rise and rise throughout the draft talk and
Yeah.
chatter and everything. And he goes on to a team that also has no clear number one receiver,
Mm-hmm.
unless you want to buy into the narrative that the guy right behind him, just by point 0.1 points, Adam Thielen. Well, Adam Thielen signs there for, honestly, I think one of the bigger contracts that a wide receiver signs this offseason.
Yeah.
And he steps into a place where he's the veteran. He's had so many seasons in a row as a stud wide receiver. And that he should be the leader of this pack. That
Yeah.
also includes DJ Chark, another offseason signing.
I like how you set that up with the just the Panthers receiving core as a whole.
Yeah,
It's kind of the
exactly.
mystery.
Yeah. Do
Um,
you do you have any initial thoughts? And then I'm going to get in and talk about all the
I
guys.
so at first I didn't know who you were talking about. And then when I made the Ole Miss connection, I did remember Ole Miss had some really good receivers over the years. And this guy's probably the best one of the group that they produced. I'm reading a little bit about him. It looks like he really rose in the draft process, like you said.
Yeah.
He was a combine freak.
Yeah.
6'2", running a 4.46, insane broad jump. And Drew, this is why you're so valuable and why you have a real talent for this fantasy football stuff. This guy, his average draft position 180, wide receiver number 70. And
Yeah.
Drew, that this could be a steal because Carolina is going to be breaking in Bryce Young, rookie. What better way to just give him some familiarity? Give this Mingo the second round pick, another rookie, put him in the slot. They don't have a real slot option there. I think Jonathan Mingo, this could be a real big sleeper as a slot receiver in that offense. I'm very high on Frank Reich too as a play caller, and I think the Panthers are a team that could be interesting.
I agree with you. But I do want to say, speaking of sleepers, um, there's one other guy, Terrence Marshall Jr.,
Uh huh.
who, is right in his prime. He is the veteran. He had a solid end of his year last year with the Panthers, kind of an unexpected one. And he can be had damn near at the end of the draft, last round or so,
Mm-hmm.
as just another guy to throw into this mix. That could
Yeah.
he be the one that sort of takes away some snaps and targets from maybe from Adam Thielen or Mingo, or do you go with one of these two guys up here in the
Mm-hmm.
146s? Either way, I think there's going to be one of these three guys is going to be a steal.
One question I have about best ball:
Yeah.
when you draft, is there any like waiver pickups allowed, or
Nope.
is it just your team that you drafted? That's
That's
it.
it.
Okay.
That's why these last
Because I
rounds
do
get
think,
so crucial.
yeah, I think with the Panthers, one of these four is going to have a really good season. Thielen, Chark, Mingo, and Marshall.
Yeah.
One of them's going to have a really good season. It could be Thielen just because he's the veteran. DJ Chark, I want to say pretty good deep ball guy. And then Mingo, I think, can really have a nice role in that slot for him.
They also, I mean, look, there's also Lavishka Chenault. If you
Oh,
want
they
to
have
throw one
him.
more, they have him.
Yeah, so this could be a really spread it around offense, a little bit like the Chiefs. Who's their running back again?
Um, uh,
They
oh
had
my God,
Foreman. They had Deontay Foreman and the kid from
Chuba
Oklahoma State,
Hubbard.
Hubbard.
Yeah.
Is he their starter? That
Oh
would
my
be.
God.
I'm pulling up the depth chart right now because whoever their starting running back is could definitely get a lot of action from a fantasy perspective. Let's
I
see.
mean, this offense.
I do like Frank Reich a lot. They've got they picked up Miles Sanders.
Yeah, it's Miles
Miles
Sanders is the
Sanders.
guy they got. Yeah.
So
So
he's a
yeah, I mean,
guy that's
he
pretty
is a good
good.
one to. Yeah, I like
Yeah, and
targeting
with the
him.
rookie, with the new coach, with the rookie quarterback, I do think they're if they can, they probably would want to run the ball a little bit.
I like what you're going with here. I mean, I really do target Miles Sanders. I just plumb forgot that he was their running back.
Yeah.
I
So
like Chuba as well because he's all the way at the end of the draft. And
yeah.
when when Deontay Foreman went out, or I mean, Christian McCaffrey last year, and it was him and Deontay. They gave way too many carries to um, Chuba Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean there is going to be a couple guys on here who might get a lot. Here's a question: do you think the guy getting the ball to him is going to be very good his rookie year, or will they struggle? Bryce
I won't
Young,
dive in all the way.
yeah,
I'll save it for when we do the NFC South, but I do think Bryce Young is going to be a superstar in this league.
okay,
And I think Frank Wright is the perfect play caller too. I just think this new generation of quarterbacks, man, they're so talented and they've kind of learned. That's why I really love Aaron Rodgers. The older I get, he really did change the quarterback position. And I think I heard Chris Sims talk about this on the Hall of Fame broadcast. Um, Aaron Rodgers, he plays backyard football off, and a little bit like Mahomes. But I think Mahomes probably used Rodgers. I think all these quarterbacks. I know Kyler Murray really loves Aaron Rodgers. I think Brady's the GOAT, but Rodgers might have been a bigger trendsetter in a way, kind of like Steph Curry a little bit in the NBA. I think you just see a lot of point guards now. They're kind of in the mold of Steph Curry, and I think you see a lot of quarterbacks that are in the mold of Aaron Rodgers. And as it pertains to Bryce Young, he's just a wizard out there. He's not the biggest guy, but he thinks the game. He's so smart. Um, and I have a lot of respect for him. And he had an amazing career at Alabama. Probably, I think Saban might have even said this. Probably the best college quarterback Saban's had.
mm.
So,
Well, I have heard that as well, and he was the number one pick for a reason. Let's
hmm
say so, and
and I
he
say
was the
all this.
consensus.
CJ Stroud was right there behind him. He had an unbelievable performance versus Georgia,
Yeah.
and so I think these rookie quarterbacks are going to be interesting.
Well, Jay, it's time to wrap it up on the Panthers wide receiver core. I want to ask you this: you have any of these guys? Two of them can be had right up here in the 146 range. And let's say you can get a discount on either of them, and that's Jonathan Mingo, Adam Thielen.
Uh
And
huh.
later in the draft, you have Chark, you have Lavishka Chenault, or you have Terrence Marshall. Let's say can all be had with your last round or so.
Yeah.
you get to pick one of them that you're going to leave a draft with. Who are you targeting out of there?
I think I'm going with Mingo. I'm banking on the upside. I'm banking
Okay.
on the unknown a little bit.
It's
I think he comes in, and if they give him that slot position, he could really rack it up catches or some screen plays. I think I'm trying to remember a little bit the Frank Wright offense in Philly. I think it was a lot of screen plays and stuff like that. And I think he'll find a nice role in that offense.
okay. Well, I love that you said that because I actually want to go with the guy right next to him at Adam Thielen.
Oh, okay.
So if you and I are drafting back to back, we'll both get the guy who we want.
Yeah.
And um, Thielen, for me, this is a guy who signs a 2-year contract. And he's signed so that he can lead this wide receiver core that has no clear guy. Adam, we're scrapping the whole wide receiver core. We want to
Yeah.
sign you and we want you to lead them. With a rookie quarterback as well, I think that's exactly what you're getting is a leader
Mm-hmm.
who is probably going to, be on such a great page. I hear about Bryce Young and his mental acuity. Well, talk about Adam Thielen at the wide receiver position. I think those two are going to get along like two peas in a pod. And I'm hoping that Adam Thielen is going to be the top guy out of this wide receiver core.
Yeah, definitely could see that. I think what you said there about the leadership stuff, that's definitely a reason the front office brought him in with rookie quarterback, another rookie receiver, just a young team in Carolina. And a Carolina team that made some noise last year. They could have won that division easily. And I think Adam Thielen comes in, he does get a nice role. He's always been a good touchdown guy down in the red zone. So I think could definitely see him and Bryce Young having a good connection.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're powering through here. We are almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And we have two more wide receivers left in this tier.
Let's do
There's a
it.
guy, there's a guy who I have been targeting heavily. He will be in my top 5 most picked wide receivers in underdog. On all my teams, I target this guy in the later rounds
Yeah.
because I think there's a very safe, reliable floor. And I also think there's pretty significant upside. And that is Marquez Valdez Scantling
Oh,
of the Chiefs.
okay. We like
So
him this year.
MVS is one of these guys that, this is the second year of his 3-year contract, which may very likely be voided next year. Um, but this is another guy who, for the same reason why I would not draft Rashee Rice, because Andy Reid doesn't play the rookie wide receiver. He doesn't
Mm.
play the rookie wide receiver because he plays the veteran who he's paying $10 million to.
Mm-hmm.
He relies on MVS for one skill and one skill only, and that is to take the top off the defense and run straight down the field.
Uh-huh.
MVS,
Yeah.
believe it or not, his big old lanky legs, he's like a damn emu. He runs fast because he has such big strides, and he gets up to one of the fastest miles per hour in the whole league every year.
Oh
So
yeah.
there's, I think teams are going to sleep on that. You saw teams um, go too deep
Mm-hmm.
on Mahomes, and they found great success sort of shutting out Tyreek Hill that way. It's not happening. They're starting to let loose on that rule with Mahomes, and
Yeah.
Mahomes is going to start throwing more deep balls next year, and I think they're going to MVS's way.
It.
And he's a guy who's old. He's older. I think he's just going to get targets next year. He's got a safe floor and potentially a big upside if they're scoring a lot of points that day.
Yeah, that's that's very good analysis. I think when I MVS and the Chiefs, it kind of reminds me a little bit what we were talking about with Thielen and the Panthers. You
Yeah.
got a veteran, and then you got a bunch of young guys. So I definitely think if I did like gun to a head, had to pick one receiver that I think's gonna lead their team in receiving yards, I do think I would probably take MVS. Just the veteran presence and Andy Reid, you would think is going to use that veteran presence a lot. But man, this guy is inconsistent though, Drew. So I really do like shy away from drafting any of these Chiefs.
I feel you, man. I mean, he is a one trick guy, and that's go get me 600 yards in a season.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir, I could do that. Um,
But for
because
best
he's
ball,
real.
you're right. It could be a great strategy because he will have, every once in a while he will have a huge game.
I think he's, I, I think he's going to have more production than he had last year. I think he'll have maybe 10, 15 more targets,
Uh huh.
maybe even a lot more. But that's why, because I think maybe a lot more. But I see a safe floor there. And
The
the way the
Chiefs,
Chiefs work, they target one wide receiver really that matchup the whole day, and then he may be shut down the next couple games.
yeah,
But when the Chiefs wide receiver lottery hits, it hits big on that day usually. You know,
yeah.
they'll have
No, I
one
love
guy
it. That's
with
good
like three,
stuff.
4 touchdowns. So
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think well, it'll be interesting to see opening night, Drew.
yeah,
Opening night.
absolutely,
Um,
yeah, Hall of Fame or
can't wait. We're getting
Raider
close.
game. We are,
We're
yeah,
going to discuss
preseason
those
next
Lions
weekend.
here in a second, but we got one more player to go over.
One more, and that is your sleeper. And I want you to
Oh,
set him up and take us into the 5 minute break here.
dude, KJ Osborne. You want to know where I first really like figured out he was a baller? It was way back in the COVID, um, and I think that's the year he came out. Maybe he was a rookie that year. The COVID season, man. The pandemic was tough for us sports fans.
It
I didn't have
was.
much to gamble on. I didn't have much to watch. One of this will just show you how big of a degenerate I've been in my life. They used during COVID when there was no sports, they would do these like Madden simulations, the sports book I was
Yeah.
betting on, and they would just do random games and you would bet on them, and it would just be the computer playing it out. It would get so frustrating. But anyways, there was one game I remember I bet against the Vikings, and KJ Osborne just ate my lunch. I mean, he was a menace. So he's always been a guy. I think can't remember where he went to college, but I do think he's a guy. I think it's why the Vikings were comfortable moving Adam Thielen. I think he comes in there and I think he has some ability. I think he might be the number 3 receiver there with them drafting Jordan Addison and obviously Jefferson. And Hawkinson's a great tight end. There's gonna be is he gonna get enough targets? I guess that's the main concern.
It is a concern, and I feel like we know what we have out of KJ Osborne, and I feel like we like it. You know, me personally, I let's say Adam Thielen moving out last year. Let's say you move those targets directly in with uh the Jordan Addison, the rookie. So if you just leave KJ Osborne exactly where he was last year,
Uh
he's a
huh.
guy who gets scores you points because sometimes he's just that third receiver when all of the other guys are covered, that he gets the easiest defender and he
Mm-hmm.
knows what to do with it. He's a really, really good last option. And Kirk Cousins, I feel like you have a competent guy who just throws to the most open wide receiver.
Yeah.
That's all KJ Osborne needs to do is just beat the worst defensive back on the field.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree. I think we talked about the Vikings offense last podcast and Kirk Cousins and O'Connell. I just think with them, moving on from Dalvin Cook, they're going to air it out this year. And I'm high on all those Vikings receivers. I think we're going to get in. We're going to get into the Vikings. You want to just go for it right now, Drew? NFC North? You got
Let's get
anything else
into
to
it.
add?
No, I like KJ Osborne, and I draft him. He's one of my higher guys that I go for this year.
Hell yeah.
He's just like MVS, safe floor, high upside.
Hell yeah. I love it. And it's good to get all this clarity with this tier of receivers because they are all bunched up. And, I've definitely found myself in a spot in one of these drafts, just like, oh, who do I take? Who do I even like out of this group? And so
Yeah.
hopefully, any listeners out there that are playing fantasy, I think we give a lot of good insight and analysis just talking it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I do it because I think it helps prepare myself,
Uh huh.
just getting, talking it out. A lot of times, especially this early in best ball, you don't have somebody who's also drafting and, stays on top of NFL news during the off season.
Yeah.
So if that is someone out there, this would be a good podcast to listen to.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to gamble, here we go. We're hitting NFC North, and we'll probably stick with. Been talking a little Vikings. We'll probably stick with them first, but just some quick thoughts overall in this division. I think this is one of, if not the most open division in the NFL this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of these four teams win it this year.
Yeah.
Maybe the Bears a little bit, but I think really interesting. You get the Vikings. They won it last year. A lot of people kind of called them a little bit fraudulent. I mean, that defense needs to hold up its end of the bargain. Um,
I
but
called
they,
them fraudulent.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there was a lot of smart people bet on the Giants in that wild card game. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I don't think I did. I think I might have stayed away from that one, but a lot of people saw that coming. Um, but yeah, it's about the defense. They bring in Brian Flores, former head coaches. I was talking a little bit about Nick Saban. He's been the all-time greatest. He's the greatest college coach, no doubt, but he might even be better at resurrecting some of these coaches' careers. You
Mm.
see some head coaches flame out. He'll come in, take them under his wing, and they kind of call it like Nick Saban's coaching rehab. They'll come in, be a really good assistant because they were a head coach for a reason at some point. And most of these guys, Drew, that's why I'm kind of high on the Vikings. They bring in Brian Flores, who really got a raw deal in Miami, was kind of twiddling his thumb last year. And I think Kevin O'Connell is going to bring him in, and he's kind of going to be like the head coach of the defense. And while Kevin O'Connell can just kind of be the coach of the offense. And Vikings plus 280 to win this division, almost 3-1, Drew.
Wow.
That's we'll get into all the other teams first before I give out my official pick, but that's tempting for me. That's tempting.
That really is the more you talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Offense.
I think it's hard to disagree with what you're talking about there. Having, two kind of great offensive minds in both respects. And the talent
Uh-huh.
is there, it is. And I love Kirk Cousins as an operator. I think he just
And yeah, I think year 2 under Kevin O'Connell with these weapons, we could see a Kirko chains. We could be flashing the chains on the plane a lot this year, I think.
Oh, that would be devastating to the league to have another year of Kirko chains. Who I'm here for it.
Aren't we all? Um, and I mean, just another thing with this offense. I mean, Justin Jefferson, he's the best receiver in the game. I think I said Chase was last pod. Um, but they're the top two, and it's crazy. They were teammates at LSU with Joe Burrow. I mean,
Yeah, no
just
doubt.
an insane team that was.
No doubt. Damn.
But yeah, we talked about Thielen. We talked about Cook being gone. I think it was a good
Well,
move to clear some cap space and get younger.
I mean, you could look at it as clear some cap space and get younger, but it feels like they were a lot more of sellers this offseason than they were buyers.
Mm-hmm.
Because another guy who I believe just kind of, I mean, they cut Zadarius Smith, did they not? Or
I
trade him?
believe so.
That was weird. It was weird
Yeah,
situation, and it just kind of gave me vibes of, um, you know, what's going on over there in Minnesota? Are they in
yeah.
disarray?
I like I I like this team, but like you're saying, I don't know if they have good enough depth. Um, the offensive line is probably what scares me most about their offense.
And
I know it's been a little bit up and down over the years, but I do think that's kind of been a bit of a weakness with them.
I know rumors are just that they're rumors, but their other stud defensive end, Daniil Hunter,
Yeah,
I see his name thrown around all the time in trade rumors. Wherever
yeah.
I just kind of start to think wherever there's smoke, there's got to at least be a spark. It just makes me wonder why the Minnesota Vikings are trying to offload their stars.
hmm I just think it was time for some of these guys, Drew. I really think the Vikings front office. I don't think they rested on their laurels of winning the division last year, having a successful season. I think I kind of think they might take a step back a little bit this year, but I do think they got younger. I think this kid it kind of reminds me a little bit what I had to do with my Jags franchise this past off season. You know, Josh
Yeah.
Allen, the edge player, he didn't want to come back on a long term deal, and I had to trade him. I had to get some first round picks, or
Mm.
I think I got 2 second rounds for him, and I had to trade Christian Kirk as well. And you know, a lot of people from the outside thought, "Oh, the Jags are going to take a step back." Well, I came out 4-0. We lost our last game to the Patriots, but 5-2, and I think this team is better than it was last year. And I could see that playing out
Hmm.
for the Vikings. Um, Defensively, this is the question mark, but they have three players on all three levels that I'm excited about. We mentioned Daniil Hunter. Did you
Yeah.
say he might want out? He's looking at a trade request.
Well, trade request or they're just shopping him.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, if he's their star defensive end, it just makes me curious. And I remember during last trade deadline, the smoke was there as well.
Uh huh.
Just a little curious why they're in selling mode rather than let's try and keep our stud pass rusher.
Yeah, I think if they can get that worked out, though, they got him up front on the D line. Then they have a linebacker, Brian Asamoah, a Boomer Sooner guy. I
Mm.
can't help but just be high on him. I think he's been one of the more talented linebackers that's come through OU. I think he has a breakout year. I think Kenneth Murray on the Chargers.
Yeah.
I think he's better than him, and I think Kenneth Murray's about to come in his own too. They picked up in the secondary another guy I like, Brian Murphy Jr. He comes in, plays a little nickelback. I mean, I think they got some playmakers on this defense.
Well, that's certainly an interesting one. I I like where you're headed with it.
And I think the big thing is Brian Flores coming in is going to have them playing as a cohesive unit. You know, this is a playoff team to me.
I'm not feeling it.
I can tell. I can tell. But yeah, I think they are going to play a first place schedule, so it'll be tough. And this division is so tight, Drew. It could come down to the schedule. They have the eighth most difficult schedule in the league, and for net rest edge, they're -2, so a little bit on the bad side, but not that bad.
Hmm. The other thing that I think has to be considered uh, is Kirk's body. Did you get a chance to watch that quarterback series
Oh,
on
on Netflix,
Netflix? Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet. I didn't even know it was out.
Oh yeah, yeah. Check it out, man.
How many quarterbacks is it? Just it's Cousins, right? And who else?
Cousins, Mariota, and Mahomes.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
Mahomes. I bet that's just.
Oh,
I
it's
bet you can't.
spectacular.
I bet you. It's hard to keep yourself from being excited watching that.
I finished it in like the first night. And Kirk, one thing it shows there is kind of the whole season for him. He was in pain, and it kind of makes you wonder if it's going to be the same situation this year or if he will uh be healthy throughout the whole year. Just talking about that the rest edge that you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if that affects a guy like Kirk Cousins a little bit more, who
It's just
you
the
know
party animal.
he is a party animal. um but there's no way to predict that. So
Right.
uh anyway, I do love the Vikings. I think there's a energy behind them that
I
is
just
just
think that yeah,
destined
go
for
ahead.
success.
I just think that number is a little disrespectful, almost 3-1 to win the division. And Brian Flores, I'm sorry, I take stock into the defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
And I think they could be one of the most well coordinated teams in the league. If I like Brian Flores a lot with the Dolphins. They had that bullshit story about the owner supposedly wanting them to tank for Tua,
Yeah.
and he just didn't get a fair shake. I really don't think he did. But also, he could be a guy that's just a better coordinator than head coach.
Hmm.
You see that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, One of the teams, Drew, that's we talked a little bit about Lions. They're going to be playing your Chiefs here pretty soon. Opening night, going to be a lot of
Mhm.
fun. Dan Campbell gets his guys playing with passion. Jared Goff and this defense is how far this team's going to go. It's going to come down to that, the long and short. I mean, I do
They
think
added they added
go ahead.
a stud first rounder from Iowa at linebacker. Just
Oh,
speaking of defense,
yeah.
um, Jack Campbell. He
Mm-hmm.
he eats pennies and nails for breakfast. He's a
Just
guy
brings his
I'm
lunch in a
excited for.
lunch pail.
Yeah, exactly. Um, he's a guy. He's a guy who I think just totally fits this Dan Campbell football mentality,
Uh huh.
and this team has a character.
Yeah, it does. They're a lot of fun to watch. I can't help but root for them. I think that's how a lot of the NFL fans are. I can't help but root for these guys. I need to go back and watch their Hard Knocks season. I didn't really watch it a whole lot last year.
It was pretty good. I did watch a decent amount of it. You had you had that running back Jamal Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He was just going crazy, and basically Dan Campbell is just kind of telling him, "Trust me, just trust me. We're gonna,
Yeah.
you know, we may not be everything that everybody else is trying to be, but we're gonna be good football players here." And he just
Uh-huh.
has them play just from the minute they get there to the minute they're gone. They're just playing. They're not doing any of this other shit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it was really fun to watch, just to see them just go at each other and get into the spirit of football. And Dan Campbell was just the leader of it all.
Uh-huh. I
The
was It's funny
one
you say the Jamal Williams thing. I was surprised they let him go. Uh, Seemed like a cowbell for them last year. I thought he had an infectious attitude that was perfect for their team, the way Campbell wants to run things. But they pulled an audible on us. They drafted Jameer Gibbs 12th overall, and
Yeah,
I like Gibbs, especially fantasy this year. I'm just not sure that was their best selection at that spot. Um, they better hope he's a real difference maker
yeah,
because
absolutely.
they got Amon Ross St. Brown, the sun god. Shout out to Matthew Berry. I don't know if he coined that, but I heard that the other night. That was hilarious.
Dude, I mean, did I already go off on my spiel about, oh yeah, the 202 with
I don't think
Amon-Ra
so.
St. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is talking to Peter King, and he had his draft party, and he was telling everybody that he believes he's going to get picked day 2 of the draft. Come on over, and ESPN's got their cameras in my house,
Uh
you
huh.
know, and he goes the whole day without getting picked, and he remembers every guy's name in order to this day. Every single guy
Oh,
picked
yes, I
the
do
whole
remember
team.
this now.
Yeah, and he gets to this point where he gets passed on day 3, and him and his brother, all they know what to do, how to just get that negative emotion off of them, is go catch footballs, and
Mm-hmm.
they do 202
Oh
because
yeah.
their best mentor told him he caught 200 balls a night, so they went for 202.
Hell
And
yeah.
that's just a guy that fires me up. He's just such a lion, such a lion.
Uh huh.
Um,
Yeah, fits that city perfectly.
yeah,
No, I remember you saying that now. That's a great story, great nugget right there.
yeah,
And I want to say another going referencing some more Madden. I I think I picked him. I used to run this league, this fantasy Madden league during COVID era. Deshulo was in it, and some other guys. But I drafted Amon Ross St. Brown on my team, and I thought he was the best receiver in his class, and it was kind of crazy to see him fall as far as he did because he had a
it's
good
true.
college career too.
I mean, I remember that happening. I wanted Chiefs to take him,
Uh
and
huh.
then he turns into this. I really love this team. I think they got exactly the guys that they wanted this offseason. They didn't need to take Jack Campbell that high. They took him. They didn't need to take Jameer Gibbs that high. They took him.
Uh
They
huh.
didn't need to trade away DeAndre Swift for a 7th rounder. They sent him away. They sent him packing. They bring in David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I love that signing, and I love the thunder and lightning that he pairs with Jameer
Oh,
Gibbs.
yeah. That is a great tandem.
I said online at one point, I just commented on something saying David Montgomery, whatever. I wouldn't take him with a 7th rounder, wouldn't take him with a 17th rounder.
Yeah.
And somebody commented under that and said the Lions offensive line made Jamal Williams, and they'll make David Montgomery good as well.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
from the Lions fan perspective. It makes sense to me that they would have a great offensive line. I
And
I just think this team is built well all around, and
and good,
I'm liking them.
I agree. Good offensive lines travel. Shout out to Michael Lombardi. He's the one that always says that. Good offensive lines, you can go into any stadium, anywhere. If you have a good offensive line, you're going to be able to compete that day. And that's what the Lions have.
Yeah,
Definitely is a top 5 offensive line in the league. It's just I love Jared Goff a lot. He's a big pardon my take, reoccurring guest, just a laid back Cali bro. But he has that Detroit edge to him now, Drew. And I think that's for the type of culture Dan Campbell wants to build. I think Jared Goff plays with a chip on his shoulder. I love the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. I
yeah.
think he should have got a head coaching job, but he's going to come back, and that's why they're the favorite in this division. They're plus 140. Um, and I think it's tough because they're the hype team this offseason. In the NFL, there's always a team maybe didn't make the playoffs the year before, but they showed some things. And the Lions are the hype team. That, along with, I do think Gibbs and Campbell are going to be impactful, but to draft a running back that high, to draft an off-ball linebacker that high, maybe the football gods, and I hate to say it, Detroit's a tortured fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the NFL football gods are going to give them a tough season.
Mm-hmm.
I hope not. I'm going to be rooting for them, but I mean, you even got stuff like the second year wideout, Jameson Williams. So much potential, but suspended the first 6 games for gambling, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, his career's off to a bumpy start. They can't strike out on these top draft picks. They
Mm.
just can't. Aiden Hutchinson was really good last year, but he needs to take off for them to be a real NFC contender. Aiden Hutchinson needs to play like that number 2 overall pick. Um, Justin Houston, I think, is a pretty good compliment to him on that D line. Nice little duo off the edge. Allegedly, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I wasn't cutting in.
Oh, my bad. Allegedly, the secondary issues kind of got cleaned up whenever they fired their secondaries coach last year, and that's when they went 8-2 the rest of the way. But Drew, I'm just Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator. I just don't know if his scheme is diverse enough, if he's a good enough game planner. And they are kind of the opposite of the Vikings in a way. I don't know if they are a great coordinated team outside of Ben Johnson. I think he's great, but I just think the Lions are just a vibes team over beating you schematically. They're just tough Detroit grit. That's why I think everybody loves them so much, myself included.
No doubt. Um, I'm high on the vibes with uh, the Lions, but what you say about drafting a linebacker and a running back so high in the draft, it makes sense to me. But it also, in the same way, makes sense that if these are two guys who are undervalued by the rest of the league, saying those two positions don't matter because I can take one in the 6th round, one in the 7th round, and you know I can have a solid, competent guy. They're
Mm-hmm.
saying we want to take the two perennial all pros that we see in these guys.
Uh huh.
I think that's the move they're trying to go, and I think if they get one or maybe even two just studs, out
Yeah.
of those two picks. And me, I find myself drafting a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs. And I sure do like Jack Campbell as well in a Dan Campbell run defense.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
those
in this,
guys.
I just like him, and I like Aiden Hutchinson. He showed some real promise last year.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can't wait to see opening night, man. You know, they're going to be playing with their hair on fire against the
Yeah.
Chiefs, and those guys just want to I do too. They just want to run through a brick wall for Dan Campbell. He's just that kind of guy. He just gets you fired up, you
I
know.
I want to. When I see these Twitter videos of him,
Yeah. I mean, he's just a walking legend.
no
Just a media, just a godsend for the media too. So,
doubt.
um uh, 11th easiest schedule this year, so not bad. Net rest edge, they're +1, so that's about average. Um, so yeah, schedule sets up for them. I want to say their win total is 9.5. I think anything less than a 10-win season would be disappointing for those, and a playoff berth would be disappointing
Yeah.
for the Lions fans.
Well, I think it's the year for them to strike.
Uh huh.
Um, they're
It
who I
is.
would bet on, but that's not a hard bet to make, obviously. So
Right. Um. So moving on to the Packers. You know, the Packers are kind of the inverse of what we've been talking about, the Lions and Vikings. They have that winning history, and I already went and bet them over 7.5 wins, and it's really just a play on history. Um, Jordan Love, biggest unknown in the NFL. I mean, what do you think about Jordan Love? You got any thoughts on him, Drew?
I mean, Jordan Love seems like a guy who, well, we've seen him play a couple of times, and he was ass. If we're being honest, though, that's all we've seen of him. Um, could he be the guy? He could, but I think it's more likely that in NFL games where the other team is really, really good and they want to kick your ass,
Uh huh.
if you're just not, fully in it, and he's been 3 years on the bench, it's hard to go from carrying a clipboard to, ripping your chest open in celebration after scoring.
Uh huh.
I think 3 years off is a long time. And yeah, everything we've seen from him has been ass. Um,
Can't disagree with that, Drew. I mean, he didn't play at a big college. Um, haven't seen enough of him, and it's his show now. And it was time to move on for Rodgers and the Packers. It was time for them to go their own way. And I'm just kind of bullish on the Packers and Jets this year, just because I think that change is going to be such a breath of air for both franchises. And I think I even met a guy at the bar the other day, Drew. He's from Wisconsin, and we were just talking a little bit about the franchise history and how he kind of felt about Rodgers. And it was just time, and that's why they struggled so much last year. There was too many distractions. They should have traded him a year before. But I think it all works out for the best, and I just couldn't help. They're going to win 8 games this year. I couldn't help myself not betting
wow.
that.
I hope that you're wrong because I do hope that the football gods come and punish the Packers for trading away Aaron Rodgers when he and not surrounding him with enough talent. I'm one of those
Right.
guys. I think they could have done a way better job surrounding
Yeah.
him with Super Bowl caliber talent.
But
Um,
the reason I'm so excited with them, Drew, um, is that yeah, they didn't draft all the skill position talent. They didn't build their team in the image of Aaron Rodgers. They built it in the image of they kind of built their team of knowing Rodgers is old and he isn't the future, and so I think that's part of why they didn't give him the help. But I totally get where you're coming from. I'm a Rodgers guy too, and they
Here's
just
my thing. I think everybody wants to bet the organization. This is not a losing organization. They're going to be right back up at the top.
yeah
Well, how sure are we that they have gone from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to the next Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers type of guy?
yeah. Well,
That's been a big key in how successful their franchise is.
yeah, and
And
it's funny. I was go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I think they got a little bit arrogant with that, and
Yeah.
it's why I'm hoping, and I also think that they don't have the offensive talent around Jordan Love to succeed.
Uh huh. I It's funny you said that about them being spoiled with the quarterback play. That's something I was talking to my friend about at the bar. Yeah, they went from Bart Starr basically. I'm probably gonna forget some people, but they just had Brett Favre, Rodgers. I mean, they've had all of them.
Yeah,
And it's funny because me being an Oklahoma fan, OU is QBU, and we've been spoiled with quarterback play my whole life, basically. I mean, Jason White to Sam Bradford to Baker to Kyler to Jalen. I mean, we've been spoiled. A lot of Heisman winners, and we kind of had a come down to earth season last year. So that could happen to the Packers here, but I just think LaFleur is a really bright mind, and I'm excited to see what kind of imprints he can put on this scheme because I do think there's an element maybe with Rodgers. He's probably happy that Rodgers is gone a little bit because he can kind of make it his own
run his own
offense, and
show. Yeah,
I think I'm excited to see LaFleur get that opportunity. I have a feeling he's been in the lab just cooking up stuff all season, and this is going to be an efficient offense. They have a really good offensive line and running game, and I'm really Drew. Have you been drafting much of Christian Watson? I think
yeah,
he's his big playability. I've definitely drafted him a time or two.
me too. I'm a believer.
Yeah, so I like that offense. It is Jordan Love, biggest unknown in the league, but they're one of the offenses I'm most excited to see this year, just with all the change. And I just think Christian Watson, we could look up Drew. I won't be surprised if he's like a top 5 receiver in this league, just like yardage wise, because I think he's going to get a lot of big plays.
The other one who they have, and I also heard rumors of them. Here's what I could see. I could see the Packers getting off to a slow start, and it comes down to the trade deadline, and they deal David Bakhtiari.
Yeah, could see that too.
Um, I I'll reserve judgment until I see them play, but my hope is that they're bad. I hope they're stricken by the football gods this year, Jay.
It could happen for sure. And like defensively, Drew, I've never been a big fan of their defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. I think this is kind of the thing I'm scared about betting them to make the playoffs. Joe Barry runs such a basic scheme, and they've had trouble stopping the run over the years. They they're so soft. Kenny Clark, the defensive tackle, who's a stud, he needs to establish himself more as a dominant presence.
Hmm.
I think he's ready. Um, but we got to see it. Kenny Clark had a little bit of a disappointing year last year. Rashawn Gary, another first round pick on this defense. He's going to be coming off a torn ACL. They got to get him in there in the mix. Hopefully, he's not out long. But this is just a bet on all the first round talent on this defense and the Packers' history to get us to 8 wins.
Yeah.
Um, Schedule wise, they're about average, 14th easiest. 0 net rest edge, the definition of average. So, you got anything else to add on the pack before we move to the Bears?
Let's finish it up.
Let's do it. So, the Bears plus 420, nice to win this division. Um, there's a lot of optimism out there for this team, even though they had the worst record in the league.
What about just to make the playoffs?
I would imagine probably they're probably like plus 250 or something like that, plus 300. I think this is an interesting team. When they realized last year, is about midway through the year, we got to get Justin Fields. We got to use his legs. Whenever they did that, their offense really took it up a level. And I do think Eberflus defensive mind, there should be some improvement there with him and Fields' second season, but I think some expectations need to be managed for this team.
Yeah. Well, there's a big, I guess, media battle, you could say, between Lombardi, Mike Lombardi,
Yeah.
and Dan Orlovsky.
Oh, really?
Very different thoughts on this Bears team. Orlovsky thinks Justin Fields is going to be the MVP, possibly the NFC. And, Lombardi thinks you can't go from worst team in the league, number one draft pick, up to MVP. We're talking playoffs in 1 year. He just
Right.
thinks there's more, and it's fine. A guy can run for a lot of yards and he can make some stats, but is he winning games?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I tend to fall more in Lombardi's opinion on that. I think but this is like a really polarizing team, and Justin Fields might be one of the most polarizing players in the NFL just because he is so damn fun to watch with his legs. But I just don't. You get in a third and long situation, I just think this team's kind of toast with him as their quarterback. With especially the more they win, if they ever have to play in a playoff game, there's going to be defensive coordinators out there that know how to defend him. And you've seen it a little bit with Lamar's struggles in the playoffs. I just think Justin Fields, he's probably the most talented quarterback this Bears franchise has had and maybe ever. So they need to give him patience. But Drew, I just don't think he sees the game. I don't think he sees it well enough in drop back situations. And there's a little
What
bit
are
of
we
an
talking
Ohio
about
State.
here? This was a guy I could find on the waiver wires week 6 last year in fantasy football. He turned it
Yeah.
around once he apparently said, I want to start running the ball. But, what are we talking about? Greatest quarterback ever in Bears history. I I thought this guy sucked up until week 6 last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's the best. I do think talent wise, man, the Bears have just been they have had I'm trying to think who their best quarterback is growing up. It might have been
Jay
Rex
Cutler.
Grossman. Yeah, Jay Cutler for sure. Jay Cutler is another guy that got a raw deal in his career, but
Oh, he was a he was a whiner as well, though.
yeah, I missed dude. We would have had a lot of fun if Jay Cutler was in the league when we were doing this podcast. I love him.
Me too.
But with Fields, man, they bring in DJ Moore from the Panthers, really good receiver. It's put up or shut up time for Justin Fields, I don't know what expectations should be for his passing numbers, but they got to win some more games. They just the Bears fans, I do think they're getting too excited. They're getting too excited with the division we talked about. It's pretty open. And I don't want those sweet Chicago people to get their hopes up because I don't know about Fields.
I I agree with you. I mean, I think he is a very good quarterback, but I think unless you need him to be doing a lot of throwing the football, then he could be a great quarterback.
Yeah. And go ahead.
As well, as long as all you need out of him is running, then we're doing good. As long as you
Yeah.
don't need him to throw that football very much.
I think like kind of like LaFleur, he's cooking stuff up this offseason. I think defensive coordinators have been really dialing in on the Bears and Jalen Hurts to a degree. I think these defensive coordinators are going to take it personally that some of these quarterbacks ran it all over their ass last year. And I'm not saying the Eagles take a big step back. I'm not saying Fields can't progress and be awesome, but I think there's going to be a curveball thrown by some of these good defensive coordinators this offseason. I think they're really going to study some stuff, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Fields really struggle this year.
I really kind of like what you're talking about there with defensive coordinators. All of a sudden, we're not just going to let you have 30 yards for free
Uh-huh.
whenever you step up in the pocket. We're going to
Uh-huh.
put a spy down there.
And it's tough to play man coverage versus a running quarterback because everybody's turning and running with the receivers, and that can open up a lot of good running lanes for a quarterback. But I don't know if Fields can. I think maybe the game plan I would use is just blitz him, make him make some one-on-one throws down the field, play some press coverage, and don't give him running lanes to escape from. I think I see it with Kyler Murray a lot. The teams that know how, and Michael Lombardi talks about this too. The teams that know how to rush the quarterback smartly and stay disciplined in their rush lanes and don't let them escape. I think that's going to be another big emphasis for defenses versus the Bears.
I like it.
Defensively, Drew.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. You got anything else to add on that?
Keep it moving.
Yeah, so we're about to wrap up here. Defensively, I don't know. They brought in a lot of new faces. Unique Ngakwe, you know, TJ Edwards. Oh, Tremaine Edmonds they brought over from the Bills. Pretty good linebacker after they moved on from Roquan last year.
Mm.
But I don't know, man. I think Eberflus is a pretty good defensive guy. So it'll be interesting to see that unit.
I
But
I think they'll be solid. I mean, I think there's a lot of pieces there to be excited about. And I think you have to reasonably expect that they'll be better than last.
mm-hmm.
Just I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm ready to go all the way up and say that they'll be up in the playoffs, but I think for me they're more of a sort of 8-8 team that you're kind
Uh-huh.
of talking about. I can really see that with the Bears.
Yeah. I think so too. Schedule wise, let's see where they're at. Sixth easiest schedule, play a last place schedule. So that gives them a little something there for the fans to get excited. The NFL, I do root for the Bears. The NFL is better when the Bears are good, and you can get that awesome Bears Packers rivalry. It hasn't Rodgers ever since he's been there. He's just dominated the Bears. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see if they can flip the switch a little bit or flip the script a little bit. You know.
They
Um,
will be, I believe.
but yeah, that's pretty much what we got for the division, man. A lot of fun. Who are you going to take the Viking or the Lions to win?
I think if I had to go just take an over what their current expected is, I would take the Bears. And if I was going to take a division winner, I would take the Lions.
Uh huh. I like that. I'm gonna take I think the Vikings win this division again, but I think the Packers 10-7 isn't out of the question. I think it could take 10 wins, maybe only 10 wins to win this division. It'll be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if all four teams are like in that 6 to 11 win range. And the beauty of the NFL, man, it's just going to come down to some late moments, some swing moments,
Yeah.
and that's how
Listen,
that's.
maybe you and I should take a some sort of straight up bet. Packers against the Bears. See who's going to finish the season with a higher record. I'd take the Bears.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sold on the Packers winning that.
Okay.
So that could be a fun one for us to follow along this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. You got anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, I do want to just say one real quick one. Little technology
Oh
piece,
yeah, can't forget Tech Corner.
tech corner. So one thing that I think you're seeing in tech corner, uh, for AI, okay, the more information I can give AI, I'm going to talk about fantasy football here. If I am able to just write out a little piece on the Drew bot where we're talking fantasy football and I can ask it Mike Evans or Chris Godwin and it's going to tell me who's the better draft pick right there.
Yeah.
If you also throw in information about your team, it's able to provide you even more context. So
Uh-huh.
now I'm able to ask it Jonathan Taylor or who's a Calvin Ridley.
Right.
And it can pull information about Jonathan Taylor and his current holdout, or not holdout, but contract dispute, and it can pull information about Calvin Ridley. I mean, I'm just blown away every single week by how much information I can get in real time by just searching this thing on AI.
Yeah.
I
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's the future of fantasy football.
It could be, man. You're you're finding some market inefficiencies, Drew. And I know you've been crushing these drafts. How many think you've done already?
Um, I would say maybe 40.
Whoo, baby.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, that's gonna wrap us up, Drew. I don't really have I know I've been using this tech stuff lately. I even forgot to do my sauna hot take, damn it. That's
Ooh.
all right. We'll save it.
All right.
Um but yeah, man, a lot of fun. That tech corner is a lot of something fun we can do at the end of the episode. Really like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's gonna be it, guys. Find your inner pirate. Go subscribe.
Arr.
Arr! Peace.
Later.